Hello and welcome back. Today at Calyx Cafe we're talking IDMP with Karen Harry. Let's get into it, shall we? Hello and welcome back at Calyx Cafe. Today joining me is Karen Harry, who's a Director of Regulatory Implementation at Calyx. Hi Karen, how are you today?
Hi Sylvain, I'm fine, thank you.
Do you have a drink with you, or do you want me to take your drink order?
I've got my cup of tea, very British, so yes, cup of tea with me now.
Great. So how long have you been at Calyx for, Karen?
I've been at Calyx for nearly 6 years now. I joined in September 2015. It's gone very quickly.
Great. And what got you in the industry in the first place?
Oh my gosh, so many years ago, I had a summer job at Glaxo. And that was really as a consequence of my dad. He worked there, and so he got me a summer job. And from that then evolved for the next 25 years working formerly at Glaxo Wellcome, and then GlaxoSmithKline in the Reg Ops department.
Oh, so interesting, lovely story to hear about your dad getting you your first job. And it sounds like you got into regulatory by accident. How do you build a career from a temp job in regulatory to being more than 25 years in the job?
Yeah, so as I said, I joined just for 6 weeks in the summer, and then when I finished university, they invited me back for a 6-month contract, I think at the time, and that just evolved into a full-time job. So I've been involved with Reg Ops, regulatory affairs, since way back 1988, 1989. So many years have I spent in the industry. Way back, it was all around filing hard copies, moving on excitedly to microfilm, which seemed cutting edge at the time, and then increasingly over time becoming more and more computerized and more reliant on regulatory systems, and I became involved in particular with the Calyx RIM solution at GSK. I was the business system owner, so I've had experience with implementation, user training, change management, just getting people engaged with using the system. And after, as I said, many years at GSK, I thought it was time for a move, and I'd worked previously with Joe English and many of the others in the RIM team and attending conferences which had been run by Calyx, so it was just great to join them, and I've had a really great time ever since working with the regulatory information management team here.
Interesting. Sounds like a very exciting career path, and you seem to have seen a lot of evolution over time. So I've seen your name coming up a lot recently about IDMP. I don't know anything about this topic myself, and I'm not sure about our audience if they know about it. Would you be able to explain to us what it stands for and why IDMP?
Yeah, absolutely. So IDMP stands for Identification of Medicinal Products. It's based on 5 global ISO standards, and it's being implemented, or in the process of being implemented, in the EU, but potentially it will be a global requirement over time. So I think as it's adopted more in the EU and it's successfully rolled out, we'll see more of a global adoption over time.
Okay, and is it something new?
So IDMP, it's been around, or there's been talk of it since maybe 2014, maybe even before then, as a regulation, as a requirement, but it hasn't been implemented in full as such as yet. So really, just to give you a bit of background about IDMP, it's really around reporting product information to a database, an EMEA database, so the European Medicines Agency rather. It's all around submitting structured data about products that are authorized in the EU, and it's really focusing on patient safety. It's a means where you can, by submitting all sorts of types of information about the products, about how they're used, about where they're marketed. It's a means of really being able to understand impacts to products, if there's any sort of patient impacts in terms of safety alerting, in terms of understanding what's on the market, so that it reduces minimizes rather the risk of shortages of supply, which is really important, and we've seen that just recently with COVID as well, the COVID vaccine being available. So it's really going to help with that, and scenarios like that in the future. And as I said, if there's any safety issues with products, because the products are going to be defined initially, within the EU, there'll be sort of definitions of products that'll be much easier to recognize when there's a specific safety issue impacting maybe an active ingredient or a specific product and strength and dose form.
It's really interesting to hear you do the correlation between IDMP and the benefits for everyone, like not having shortage of product. I didn't realize the impact, so yeah, that's very fascinating. So I've done a bit of homework in preparation for today's interview. I searched IDMP and I saw that you're part of a task force on this topic. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, so there's a task force. It's the SPORE task force, which stands for substances, products, organizations and referentials, and they're sort of the four tenets, I guess, of IDMP. And as part of that task force, it's coordinated, run by the EMEA, and it includes industry, so representatives from the industry, from national competent authorities, so the regulatory health authorities, and also from vendors. So I've been lucky that I've been able to be part of that. I feel privileged to be part of that, because it provides options and opportunities to provide feedback to the EMEA, to understand requirements from the pharmaceutical, the industry, and to also understand how the requirements are evolving for IDMP, so that we can, as vendors, provide solutions that support IDMP and the requirements to submit information to the product management services database.
That's such a great initiative. I love it when we see groups across sponsors, across vendors that work together, all working towards one goal. I think it's becoming more and more done, actually. We see that with DTRA as well in decentralized trials. And it's great to see our industry really join forces together like this. So as part of this group, how many of the sponsors who are part of that task force would you say are ready for IDMP?
So I think people are preparing for IDMP right now. Across pharma companies, there will be enormous, significant impacts for IDMP, because it's not just relevant to regulatory, it's relevant to many other parts of the organization. So the manufacturing, commercial, the local European affiliates, the local country offices, and also labeling, CMC, and back to Reg Ops again. So back to my sort of home, and from a regulatory information management perspective, there will be impacts for the regulatory information management team and also for the publishing teams as well. So I don't know that every people or clients, customers will be 100% ready yet, but they will certainly be making those preparations because they'll need to, because we know now, following the publication of the implementation guide version 2 back in February this year by the EMEA, we know that the timelines have started. So we will have a period of no less than 1 year for the PMS system to be available. So that will be available for clients to then start to transition their centrally approved products from the current database that's in use. So today there are requirements to submit product information to the EMEA, and that's in a system called the Extended User Vigilance. I've just written it down to remember, Medicinal Product Dictionary. So XEVMPD, to those of us in the know, much easier to say than that mouthful. So there are, today, as I said, they are submitting to XEVMPD, and they will need to transition across to PMS. So there'll be a lot of work involved there.
So if I heard you well, then there's a lot of ramifications, a lot to do, and time pressure. So now I understand why there's so much focus on IDMP, and I'm pretty sure all the sponsors must be actively working on it.
Yeah, they will. I'm sure they absolutely will. So once we talked a little bit there about the system being available, so they will then begin the transition of their centrally approved products into the system from XEVMPD. But then again, after a period of not less than a year, they will then be required to it will be a requirement, it will be compulsory to submit the centrally approved products via to the PMS database. And then they need to start thinking as well about the non-centrally approved products as well. So for centrally approved products, there's a transition period. For those that aren't non-centrally approved, then they will have to just switch their portfolio from XEVMPD directly to PMS, and there will be lots of data enrichments along the way, lots of data corrections. And again, one of the other significant impacts is really, as I said, from a publishing perspective. Currently, all the reporting for XEVMPD is post-approval. For IDMP, for the centrally approved products, that requirement to submit will be at the time the dossier is submitted. So along with the ECTD, the FIRE message that will be generated for submission to PMS will need to be available and submitted at the time of the dossier. So again, sort of changing the whole significance of the reporting so that it's at time of submission and not post approval as it is today.
So you really need to be an expert in this area to really understand all the ramifications. It's great to hear from you like everything that needs to happen, and I can really feel that this is something that you're passionate about and that you know a lot about. Listen, I really appreciate your time, but I'm conscious of time as well. I always like asking our guests to look into their crystal ball. And so what would you like to see in clinical trials or in regulatory in the next 10 years?
Gosh, that's a big question. I think if we go back to talking a little bit about structured data and the requirement more and more so for submitting structured data rather than the dossier itself, the PDF, the Word document, I think we might see the end of the dossier potentially, or at least a much reduced one. So that's my prediction for the future.
So prediction, the end of the dossier. Okay. All right, well, Karen, thank you very much for your time. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure all our listeners have also learned a lot. So thank you for that. And to all of you, thank you for watching today, and we'll be back soon at Calyx Cafe with a new episode. Thank you, Karen, and goodbye.